I was watching this video. This guy went back and he was studying these people who were in prison at this certain time in our country. And he was looking at this one prison, and he found out that all these, like 25 of these people, they traced their lineage back to one man. So he started to research the family. He found out that this man was a drifter. He was a grifter. He was a pauper. He had 12 children from different women. Of those women, most of them became prostitutes. Of his daughters and his granddaughters and his great-granddaughters all became prostitutes. 15 of them became murderers. There's all this list. They were murderers. They were prostitutes. They were thieves. They were in jail. Most of them were in prison. From this one man. Then he studied another man who was in that same time in the same neighborhood. Other man he studied was Jonathan Edwards, by the way, a pastor. From his lineage came 42 pastors. A vice president was from his lineage. Governors, attorneys, congressmen, preachers. Why? Why? Because he told them so much? No, because they saw what their father did. Fathers and mothers, it matters. Grandparents, it matters what your children and your grandchildren see you doing. Bibles, open to the book of 1 Kings. We're going to be in chapter 16. We love hero stories. Don't you love to hear a good story about a hero? I mean, look at today. Look at the Marvel movies. They're about heroes. Now, obviously, through the movie, we find out that they are human because they're still fallible. They still make mistakes. But we love to hear stories about people who kind of inspire in us to be better than we are, to make us want to do better. Think about through history. One of my favorite heroes is George Washington. I've hanging in my house now is a picture of George kneeling before his horse is behind him. He's kneeling down. He's praying during the war. There's so many times that we should have lost, and we didn't. And the leaders of our country the founders of our country truly believed this was God's providence, that it was God that was making this happen. We think of throughout other places in history. We think of Mahatma Gandhi in India. He was a man who was nobody. And what did he do? He led peaceful protests. He led a change in his country by means that were not violent, but were very peaceful. We have Abraham Lincoln, who held our country together. And yes, all of these leaders were human, and all of these leaders were fallible. But they did something amazing. Nelson Mandela, who forgave his enemies in South Africa and mended and healed a country. And even people like Steve Jobs, who had an innovative idea about technology and changed the world. Now, we could argue maybe not necessarily always for the good, but he did change the world. And obviously, if we've got this plethora of heroes throughout history, we also have a plethora of villains. There are plenty of stories about leaders who let their flaws become more prominent and get the best of them. Leaders who lost their way or caused a lot of harm. We've got people like Hitler, Stalin, and Mao Zedong that remind us that when leaders allow their power to go to their head, it oftentimes leaves death and destruction behind them. Even big names from history like Genghis Khan and Napoleon, who were very good at what they did, end up leaving behind stories of war and suffering. The Bible gives us what we're going to look at today, a very short story. I looked at that and I'm like, there's only 3 verses. I'm like, I'm going to preach on it. because it's very important. And we're going to learn about King Elah in 1 Kings 16. He was king, but instead of staying sharp, instead of staying focused on what kings should focus on, looking out for his people, in a moment of extreme weakness, he was caught off guard. Literally, he was drunk and vulnerable. And one of his own officials turned on him and killed him. This is not a story that has a happy ending. It's a clear warning to us. See, being a leader is not about having the title. It's not about being in charge. It's about staying alert. It's about keeping your act together. It's about taking care of the people that you lead. So we're going to talk about why leadership needs to be done with vigilance and self-discipline, and how Jesus gave us the best example of how real power leads well, no matter what kind of world that we're living in. So let's go to the Bible. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 16, and we'll begin with verses 8 and 9. In the 26th year of Asa, king of Judah. So now we are now in the northern kingdom again. We've spent some time in the southern kingdom where kings were good and bad, but for the most part pretty good. And now we're going to the northern kingdom where there were really no good kings. And now we have in the 6th year of Asa, king of Judah, Elah, the son of Baasha, began to reign over Israel in Tirzah. And he reigned 2 years. But his servant Zimri, commander of half his chariots, conspired against him. When he was at Tirzah, drinking himself drunk in the house of Arza, who was over the household in Tirzah. You ever notice how things seem to go sideways when we begin to coast? When we begin to take our hands off the wheel? Think about this. You know, our vehicles, with power steering, they stay pretty straight. But after a while, my truck does this now. It seems, if I let go of the steering wheel, which I don't recommend doing, even if you have a Tesla, you might want to keep your hands closed. My truck will start to do this. And thank goodness they have rumble strips over here on the road to wake us up. But we seem to drift when we take our hands off the wheel of our life. And that's what happened to King Elah. He was supposed to be leading his nation. There were 10 tribes he was responsible for. But instead of staying sharp, instead of keeping his eyes wide open, he lets down his guard in a moment of weakness. He's hanging out. He's drinking with his friends. He's having a good old time. And he's drinking himself drunk. And he did not see the warning that was right in front of him. It's very much a classic case of complacency. I was going to show you a picture of complacency. I didn't get a chance to get that picture taken. I'll explain it to you. I have a garden in my backyard. I have garden boxes. I grow green beans. I grow tomatoes. I grow peppers. I grew watermelon last year. Beautiful garden. Well, we decided I wasn't going to do my garden this year because I need to rebuild parts. There's raspberries, there's strawberries, lots of mint that some bird planted. I decided to not do the garden, so I just kind of ignored it, became complacent with it. I have thistle plants that have grown this tall in my garden, and they've gone to seed. I've become complacent. And that's what happened to King Elah. He became complacent. He didn't keep his eyes open to what was going on around him. He thought everything was just fine. So, he just decided to stop paying attention. If we go to Peter, 1 Peter, Peter tells us, he says, be sober-minded. Be watchful. Why? Because your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. I know I can't blame Satan. Well, Actually, I can blame Adam and Eve for the thistles being in my garden because they're the ones who originally caused thistles and thorns to happen. But I can't blame anybody but myself for the thistles in my garden. I can't. It was my fault. I let my guard down. And Peter gives us a pretty strong warning. Don't get comfortable. Don't let your guard down. Stay awake. In this world, we cannot let our guard down. The evil one is waiting in the shadows, ready to pounce, ready to move us in a direction we should not and don't want to go. We need to stay awake. We need to stay focused. Doesn't mean we can't enjoy ourselves. Doesn't mean I can't have a moment where I enjoy myself. But even in my fun, even in my joy, I must be sober-minded. I must have full control of the faculties of my brain, which sometimes is difficult, I'll be honest with you. But I have to be sober-minded. Elah's story is not just a history lesson. It's a reminder to all of us, whether we're a leader at work, whether we're a leader in the home, whether we're a leader at school, or whether we're just in our community, complacency is dangerous. The book of Proverbs paints a very vivid picture of someone who's lazy and lets things slide. This is what the writer of Proverbs says in Proverbs 24. It says, I passed by the field of a sluggard. Well, he could have passed by my garden. I guess I was being a sluggard. By the vineyard of a man lacking sense. Boy, that's starting to hit hard. And behold, it was all overgrown with thorns, and the ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. Then I saw and considered it. I looked and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. Now, I want to be careful and make sure you understand. The writer of Proverbs is not saying you need to work all the time. I mean, even Jesus went off to rest, okay? It's not saying that we have to be workaholics. What it is saying, you need to pay attention to what's going on in your realm of influence. If parents don't know what's going on in their homes, there's going to be problems. If you don't know what's going on in your neighborhood, there's going to be problems. If you don't know what's going on in the lives of your children, there's going to be problems. And yes, I know. There are things I did I never told my mom and dad about, and I never will tell my mom and dad about. I hope that when we get to heaven, there's not a list that Jesus gives to my parents. These are the things your kid did. If he does, I want to see my mom and dad's list that, he gave to their parents. But we need to know what's happening around us. What happens when we don't pay attention? Our walls fall down. The thorns grow. The thistles fill the ground. Things start to fall apart. Jesus himself, he warns us in Matthew 24. He says, therefore, stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. He's talking about the end. He's talking about when Jesus returns. He says, you don't know when he's coming, so stay awake. Make sure you're ready all the time, at all moments. He's not just talking about that. He's saying stay alert into the areas of your life. Don't get lazy. Don't get distracted. You know your weaknesses. If I know my weaknesses, I need to be even more vigilant to make sure that those weaknesses do not overcome me. Don't be distracted. Leadership and reality, life itself, requires that we stay awake and we stay focused and not get too comfortable. Now, I'm an analytical thinker. I'm an accountant by trade, and I think God created me that way. So a lot of things I look at this, I think about from a financial perspective. I've been balancing a lot of people's checkbooks right now, businesses. What happens when I'm in the middle of balancing and I'm not paying attention? Oops. What happens if I'm like balancing, I just did 3 years of checkbooks that hadn't been balanced in 3 years for one client? What happens if I make a mistake back in the first year? It carries forward. The mistake continues. It doesn't go away just because the year end. See, we need to pay attention to our lives. We can't get comfortable and let our guard down. When we stay alert, we're ready for whatever comes our way. So what happens to Elah? Look at it again in verse 9. But his servant Zimri, commander of half his chariots, conspired against him when he was at Tirzah, drinking himself drunk in the house of Arza, who was over the household in Tirzah. Zimri came in and struck him down and killed him in the 27th year of Asa, king of Judah, and reigned in his place. What's interesting about the northern kingdom, I thought about this week as I was looking at this, is in the southern kingdom it was always, you have David and then Solomon and then Rehoboam, which was Solomon's son, and it just continues in the lineage. But look in the northern kingdom, what happens? Well, this person, Jeroboam, became first king. Well, his son becomes king and then he gets killed, and somebody else from another tribe becomes king. And now that person gets killed and somebody else from another tribe comes in, kills, and becomes king. What Elah did, he let his habit slide, and it opened him up to things that we never expect. He didn't have discipline, especially when it came to drinking. It left him open for trouble. He's supposed to be the king. He's supposed to be leading. And believe me, most really good leaders lead by example. What did Paul say? Follow me as I follow Christ. Why? Because he's following Christ. He's doing what he's supposed to do. Do what I do. Not because it's me doing it, it's because Christ's doing it in me, and I'm doing what Jesus did. What we do matters. A parent, they shouldn't though. You can't tell a child, don't do this, and then turn around and do it yourself. Children learn more from seeing than they do from hearing.